So, no attempt at a clever quip to introduce this one. I don't think that would do the subject of this video justice. Which is, unaliving survivors? How did you survive? Story 1. I got one story that is kinda like that. It's not a direct unaliving attempt, but people trying to induce my expiration. Last year I met a girl on the internet and we started dating. Since we both liked each other, we decided to make things official in front of our families. But her parents never liked the idea, and never liked me since I came from a poor family and they had lands and so on. Her parents always said behind my back that she deserved someone better and didn't want her to starve. But that never stopped us from seeing each other because we never cared about money. That was until the day I walked her home to the place her parents usually picked her up, because they lived in a farm in the outskirts of the city. Then I left her for a minute to look for a place where I could get the next bus. It was late at night, and at that time there was no bus anymore. I sent her a message asking her to wait for me because there wasn't any bus coming anymore, but they left without thinking twice. To top it off, in that spot I was a place for substance deals and so on. The dealers and addicts started to notice me and realize I was lost. They stared at me without blinking an eye, and chills came down my spine. I almost felt like SpongeBob in that episode he waits for the bus in that dark place. I sent a message to the girl once again, begging them to come back. If my phone expired with literally 1% of battery, I was far from home and terminated for sure, but they didn't care. Luckily for me, one last bus making its last trip stopped for me and took me to the nearest station, and I broke up with her after that. Later on, I was watching the news one day about someone almost being beaten to death because the substance dealers of a neighborhood thought he was a snitch working with the cops, just because he was not from there and was standing still on a spot. I looked at the scene, and I saw the same street and the same place I was standing. They left me to expire, but that bus driver saved my life. If it wasn't for him, it could have been me on that news. So here's my advice. Be careful with the people you meet. I guess when he confronted the girl about this, she didn't think it was a big deal to leave him there like that. If it was some sort of mistake or she didn't get the message, I would have understood. But I guess that wasn't the case. I'm glad this person survived. I've been through strange places myself. Greyhound bus, when I get off, you have to walk through Skid Row to get to the main downtown area. And if I didn't walk during the day, that would be a really spooky place. Story 2. I survived many unaliving attempts, like getting a gun to my head. Someone tried to throw me off a balcony. I almost expired when someone tried to stab me with a knife and hammer. I survived when someone tried to shove me down the stairs. When I almost been thrown off the balcony, I elbowed the guy in the face. That got me in trouble. The teachers saw when the guy tried to throw me off the balcony, but apparently the bully who tried to unalive me is the favorite by the teachers, and they always protect him because he's in the football team. And the guy who put a gun to my head was too weak to pull the trigger, which the teachers also saw, and they suspended me instead of the guy with the gun. When I was almost stabbed by someone with a knife, I was fighting for my life when I knocked the knife out of his hand. I was on top of him and stabbed it through his shoulder. Our school also has a substance and pot problem. Most of these substances are illegal to smoke. They have a Nazi flag, and some people actually did the salute. The school is full of racist bullying, especially the teachers, staff, and other students. When you expire in school, your body will be disgraced and discarded in the dumpster. Like we don't matter. While the football player expires, they get a full ceremony, and full of good memories pictures of the person. The strongest and fittest will survive. I refuse to go down and expire. Unalive or be unalived, you always want to survive to live another day. So resist and fight. Don't give in. You either fight to survive or accept defeat, and you'll be accepting how this is going to end. I want to know where this school is so I can avoid it. What part of the country do you think this place is? Or do you think it's in the U.S.? Is it somewhere else? I don't know. Make your guesses in the comments. I'd like to know. Story 3. I used to be an armed security guard. One night, like any other, we were ending our rotation since the area was secure, and we went to the trailer to check in. Not too long after, we hear a loud engine roaring down the road just outside the facility. We have one of those large yellow bar gates to enter and exit the property, which is where we hear a loud crash. We spring up out of concern, and as we shift out of our seats to get up, we hear pop, 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 and the trailer getting smacked. Whoever this is has crashed their truck into the gate, brights on, and is firing on our position. We scrambled to get our weapons and any ammo, which I had a .44 Magnum and my partner had a 1911, and we darted behind 2 shipping containers. After shouting our warnings to cease fire, we engaged in a firefight. Trouble was, the brights on the truck were blinding us and just barely concealing the muzzle flash from their weapon. I managed to shoot out one headlight and blow out the windshield before I could get any kind of clear visual, which was still nothing but blackness and muzzle flash. I tilted out of the cover again briefly to see if I could catch where they were, and as soon as they fired, I aimed towards the flash. But as I was slipping back into cover, a bullet zipped right past my face. About 2 or so minutes of peeking and shooting and reloading later, and they finally spread off into the night. 5 minutes after, and the cops show up to take statements. So glad I was able to be armed and defend myself. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here, and neither were my kids, as they hadn't been conceived yet. And again, you've got to wonder, what was this place? What was in the shipping containers? Was this trying to be a robbery? Was this an attack? I worked as a security guard, and only once or twice have I carried a weapon. It was something that where money was being handled, but nothing came of it. There was just too much around there for anyone to try and attempt it, so I'm very lucky there. Story 4. My mom almost unalived my dad. She didn't because he literally shoved her on the ground and told her to stop. She literally embarrassed herself thinking my dad was cheating on her, from only a phone call from a coworker. And this wasn't the only time. She later got diagnosed with a mild case of schizophrenia and anger issues too. All these things she had when he was still alive. Also, because she can't still get over the fact that my great-grandmother expired. And when this happened, it was almost 10 years. Now she's recovered from that episode, and her anger issues went down a lot. My ex-uncle almost drowned my cousin in a bathtub when he was depressed, but he pulled out quickly because he realized it. That was the day my aunt asked him for a divorce. Honestly, he was always a jerkwad, but my aunt is another jerkwad too, on her own. The guy remarried and now has 2 kids and living happy out of alcoholism. My cousin, on the other hand, has a lot of issues from this and is going on his way to become his own version of my ex-uncle. Story 5. One of my coworkers was a medical professional in the military and has PTSD from an event in the battles they served in one day. They're sitting in the back of the store I worked at on their phone. I was cleaning up the place for the night. I told them I was setting the alarm so they could leave. After I said that, they grabbed their stuff and left quickly. So I'm grabbing my stuff when I'm too late and the alarm goes. The coworker then turns back inside rambling and tries to unalive me with a giant metal pan, and I have to defend myself. Luckily, I'm stronger than them, so I overpower them easily. They then hit me over the head and I stumble backwards. They keep swinging. I'm getting hit left and right, so I grabbed the pan, then kicked their arm, and they dropped the pan. I hit them over the head as hard as I could, and I ran, dropping the pan next to them while dialing 911. In the end, they weren't convicted as they had mental problems, and I haven't heard from them since. Story 6. I got one story. Basically, I was like about 9, running back home at 4 p.m. after playing with friends at the local park. I met this kid on the way back, and he was showing off his knife to me. If I remember correctly, it was a butterfly knife. I don't know how he even got that, but when I just said cool and was preparing to leave, he threatened to stab me in the stomach, which I shrugged off, thinking it was a joke. And there goes my total courage as I almost got stabbed in the stomach by like a 6-year-old carrying a sharp-as-hell butterfly knife. Miraculously, I survived thanks to my flash-like reflexes and dodged the damn knife. Needless to say, his grandpa witnessed the scene while watering his plants and he got grounded for 3 weeks. I am so damn completely lucky to have survived that. Too long didn't read? I was running home when I met a kid with a knife and tried to stab me, but I survived by reflexes. This person starts off by saying, I got one story. I'd say if you go through life and you have only one story where you've survived an unaliving attempt, I'd say you've got a good life. Of course, no stories of being unalived would be better, but just one is good. Story 7. Head wounds bleed a lot. That whole area is very vascular. So the kitchen being covered in blood in that one story wasn't that surprising. I'm blind and work in 2 different locations in the city. One is fairly safe and there are plenty of people there who know me and would help if I got in trouble. At least I hope they would. The other is not. It's a substance rehab center with a really bad reputation. They're chronically understaffed and the staff they do have are overworked and underpaid and aren't very helpful. There's a lot of tension among the clients and staff, and several fistfights have broken out. Apparently, nothing's ever happened to other interviewers who've worked there, and we're usually seen as allies rather than targets due to our role. But even so, it'd be just my luck for something to happen to me while I was there. But we'll see. Hopefully not. Though this thread makes me hella uneasy. Story 8. I got a story. It's Friday when we get tests and test results. We did 3 tests each Friday, which all had separate scores. Don't ask, I don't know either. I got a 90%, 80%, 50%. Happy as a dog as I go home and show my mother. She grabs one of her wine bottles and starts smashing it into my head, dripping blood, wine, and glass everywhere. My dad was a police officer and came home early to find my mother beating me to expiration in a pool of glass, blood, and wine just as she's about to stab me. He immediately rushed me over to the hospital after yanking me from the floor and dashing out the door, and the doctor said, and I quote, "I do not know how you survived that. You're a very strong girl. If your father hadn't come home, I doubt you would have survived." Story 9. This isn't me, but my mother. I'll put it short because she normally doesn't like talking about it, so I have no information. Story. There was this girl called Carly or something. My mom hung out with her frequently until she realized Carly was acting rather odd. My mom decides to let her go as a friend, and I suppose months later it turns out she was a psychopath or sociopath. I'm too tired to care, and was intending on unaliving her. If it weren't for my mother's gut, I probably wouldn't be here. How did I learn this? We have a tortie cat called Callie. I developed an accent or something that made me say Carly somehow. When I first said it, my mother asked me politely to not call her that. I did it again unintentionally, and then I was told the story. I was bewildered. As far as I know, neither of my parents had any story like that where they were almost unalived. If that happened, it would kind of make me feel very fortunate to be where I am. How about you? Do any of you have any parents that have stories like this? Story 10. I can remember when this gal who looked like she'd had the absolute hell beat out of her come banging on my door, scared her boyfriend was going to unalive her. So I basically told her to hide in the bathroom while I called the cops. And partway through the call, the boyfriend came pounding on the door, and I asked the 911 operator if I was allowed to shoot him, and she said, "I'm not going to say what you are or aren't allowed to legally do. You just do whatever you need to do to protect yourself and that woman." And right when that muscle-bound meathead broke through the door, I shot him in the chest with my shotgun and dropped him right there. I thankfully didn't get in any legal trouble, and the woman is hopefully in a much better place now.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 11. I have two. Both were drowning attempts, years apart. The first one was in public in a not-so-safe area of the city at the time. I punched them in privates and went home. And the second was at a different public pool trying to get over the fear of water. About 3 hours later, I noticed a hand on my head holding me down. However, this time I didn't punch them. I took out a pocket knife and cut them across the leg. I was 14 then, am 28 now, and never been to a pool since. But there is nothing I wouldn't do to live. And if put in that scenario again, I'd do what's necessary to live. Even if it means having to do the unthinkable if there's no other option. Story 12. This happened in the first grade. I was seating with this kid and we were talking. Then he moves his hand as fast as he can, and I grabbed his forearm and moved his hand, and he told me it was a piece of glass. And I asked him what he was trying to do, and he told me he was trying to gut me. I told the teacher, and he was taken to the principal's office, and I never saw him again. I would always see him in the principal's office before this happened, so he must have been a pretty bad kid. Part of me's starting to feel really sheltered. I don't think I could face having a case of being unalived in the first grade. I just didn't live in that kind of life. Does anybody else here have any kind of stories like that where they've faced that kind of situation that early on in their lives? What did you do? Story 13. I'm 10, but a big person, 5'5", 177 pounds, and a state champion wrestler. I was walking home from my friend's house when a woman came over to me and stabbed me. With all my might, I punch her in the face and run away, but she chased me. So I stabbed her with my house key. Blood everywhere. I saw a cop, run over, but then I pass out. Next thing I remember is waking up in the hospital. I'm still in rehab. She got caught. 13 years in prison. Story 14. Domestic violence / unaliving attempt survivor here. The only reason that I survived is because my sibling hesitated at stabbing me with full power. The wound on the side was still deep enough to qualify as a stab, and police were involved. The sibling was found not guilty, but spent 2 weeks in psych ward and had a restraining order for 1 month. No scars are there anymore, by the way. Story 15. You don't know how many times I almost perished the same way. So me and my family would go to this one place. Not gonna say the name because I live fairly close. There's a lake nearby the hotels, so we drive down and go for a swim. I almost drowned. 3 times. The same way each time, swimming out too far. So did this person finally stop swimming out too far? Or did the parents just stop taking them there? What happened there? What was the catalyst that ended things at the number 3? Story 16. Most of these stories just seem like the survivors would have been better off perishing. Medical issues, severe trauma and PTSD, expensive medical and court bills that might as well have left them broke. Man, I would have preferred to expire. But then again, I'm a Gen Z, so this isn't anything new. Story 17. There isn't a lot of blood in a scalp. Let me stop you there, Chief. The head gets a lot of blood. A lot goes to the brain, but a lot still goes everywhere else. Head wounds almost always bleed profusely, and large head wounds can have enough bleeding for you to go into shock or expire. Story 18. I could see with the stabbed woman she not being able to eat certain things if she actually had damage done to her intestines or stomach. But if not, she should be fine after a while, since your body actually can rearrange intestines back to their correct orientation without help. So she should be okay after a bit. Story 19. almost got run over by a truck with iced over plates. They didn't even hit the brakes and missed by a literal inch. At that point, I'd be scapegoated for so much stuff that I didn't even try jumping in the bed and calling the cops, since I expected to be locked up for assault or something. Story 20. When I was 13, me and my friends were jumped by about 20 kids in clown masks, and my friends ran away, and I had enough, and we were with 2 girls, and I beat all of them, and it turns out they went to my school. I could tell because I messed up their faces. Story 21. One kid tried to push me down underwater while it was playtime in swimming class. I was in 2nd grade. I almost drowned. I pushed him over me and banged him in the jaw full power, even though I was a small kid. He got a broken nose and I didn't get punished. Story 22. Once in middle school, I was biking home when some 8th grader comes up to me and shoved me into the road. And if I moved out of the place I was a second later, I would have been hit by a guy on a motorcycle that was going about 120 miles per hour. Story 23. People don't expect you to do the thing that would guarantee you getting injured. That thing is usually stupid to do. It's also the thing that will keep you alive, though you will almost assuredly take injuries that take years to heal. I should know. Story 24. I've got to say, some of the prison sentences are way too short for what they did. Attempted unaliving? B&E with harmful intent? Attempted vehicular manslaughter? 14 years of prison. Seriously? That's way too short for them. Story 25. I almost drowned once. Once the time slowed and I was thinking about what was happening, I realized that I was drowning and swam really fast up to the air and scared, and was asked if I was okay. I almost blacked out. Story 26. This is why I carry. Had one guy try to sucker punch me from behind, hit me once and knocked me forward, stumbled, reached for my weapon, and put him down as he advanced toward me again. One less piece of trash on this earth. Story 27. I got a story where this person showed up and started stabbing me in the legs, and I turned into Among Us baller, but then I farted, and they got blown and blasted into the oblivion of hell. Now give me karma. Story 28. The difference in tone from the Truth or Dare vids to the disturbing stuff vids always has me on edge, but my house's silence is always scary after the unaliving videos. Story 29. This gives me more than enough reason to carry a gun, even if it's illegal. I will not be caught lacking. Always carry a gun or knife. You could turn the tables in these situations. Be prepared for anything. Story 30. The story where the girl's guts were just hanging out of her, where she's blank-faced on the path holding herself together, kind of sounds like an old TikTok drawing. Not trying to offend, just the image I got. Story 31. There's not a lot of blood in a scalp. That has to be one of the dumbest statements I've ever heard in my life. I guess it's never occurred to this girl that blood circulates around your body. Story 32. Wait. A guy runs up to a girl, cuts her stomach open, spilling her intestines out, and he only gets 13 years in prison? 13? That should be at least 50. What the actual hell? Story 33. The one where she was holding her own guts. That image is gonna torturatize me for years. I don't get sick from many things, but I feel like throwing up. Story 34. The one with stabbing the guts is just so annoying because 13 years is so little. The lowest amount, I think, should be 20 to 30 years. Story 35. Unaliving survivor is an oxymoron. It's impossible to survive an unaliving. You should have said attempted unaliving survivors. Story 36. The sister trying to drown their sibling was absolutely disturbing. I don't think she felt sorry at all. She was sad it didn't work. Story 37. When I was a kid, I opened up all the cabinets in a metal drawer, and it almost fell on me. If my mom wasn't there, I could have perished. Story 38. Honestly, I feel like attempted unaliving should have the same charges. Like, why do you get a shorter sentence for being bad at unaliving? Story 39. The person who hit the guy with the bong? Oh my God, everyone knows head wounds bleed like hell. Full of blood vessels. Story 40. There's a lot of blood in the scalp. It's very vascular. And yes, someone did watch a documentary last night. Story 41. I survived at age 11, but it left a big mark. Yeah, my family pretty much, you know. Story 42. That moment when a guy gets a longer sentence for smoking a joint than committing a forced intimate act. Story 43. Chuck E. Cheese another by my two cousins last when a guy broke into my house. Story 44. My school almost got shot up once. Girl was totally mad and insanely racist. Story 45. I survived an unaliving attempt from my brother because he used a stone. Story 46. The scalp has a big ton of blood vessels in it.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.